I don't know that I've met too many other people that would admit they throw up all the time, but um, I just realized it was almost just continually, and it would pop up occasionally walking throughout the day, or if someone yelled at us, it'd be a trigger, and I'd get really worked up. But I was knocking, and what would happen is my stomach would start getting grumbly, and I'd start to feel like when you need to throw up, basically. And it was just kind of my body's reaction to the anxiety, stress of it. And so, I don't know, it was just something I recognized and didn't want to admit for a really long time. Like I said, I always just thought, at the beginning, I thought it was purely like I just needed to adjust. And so then I was 7 months in to my mission, and I remember we ate something and it did not sit well, it just wasn't something that I liked in general. And so we went home and I threw it all up, and my companion was like, what about your teeth? Like, oh my gosh, like, I know that you're trying to work through this, but your poor teeth, they're gonna go rotten from all the times that you throw up. And so I was like, yeah, it's a valid point. I should probably go get this checked out. So I started seeing one of the counselors, and just being able to get a grip on like my feelings. But, well, first of all, I have to explain that growing up, I was very much like an introvert. I did not like talking to people. I avoided it at all costs. I remember I would bring books out with me when we went out to dinner as a family, or any sort of social event where we had to go to family reunion. I would bring my books with me and I'd go off in a corner and read by myself. And that's who I was. And so going out in the mission field, yes, I mean, I'd grown a lot, so I knew how to talk to people. I had a lot of jobs, so I knew how to be social, but I guess it was against a social norm to walk up to somebody's house when they're eating dinner and asking if they would, I guess, change their whole lives for these two girls standing at their door. And I knew it wasn't that, but logically, if I opened the door on that situation, I feel like I would have been like, what are you doing here? And so I always thought of that as we went to knock doors, like, what are you doing here? Why are you bothering me? Why would you bother doing this? And so I could feel that, and I didn't want to bother people, and I care so much what people think. I'm really worried about what people think when I walk down the street, and that kind of faded away the longer I was on my mission, but not completely. And so then it just kind of got to a point where, because I did it so often, I think that was my body's natural reaction to it. And so even if I wasn't actually nervous to knock doors, that's just what my body had been trained to do at that point. And so there wasn't really any going back until I finished it. So I just kind of had to finish it. And then once I was done, get home and get some help, and I'm a lot better. I can't say I don't throw up sometimes when I have really bad anxiety, but it takes a lot to get to that point now. So it tested my limits for sure, physically, and that was annoying because I would just be exhausted after every knocking session, just so tired, and emotionally because why can't I figure this out? Why can't I stop this from happening? Spiritually, why am I not? Why am I knocking on doors to preach the gospel, and yet here I am having like a physical ailment because of it? But I realized that there were a lot of other missionaries who had physical ailments, and this was just mine. This was my issue, and I had companions who had anxiety as well, and so it was so helpful towards the end, and to be able to tell new missionaries or other sisters when I was on exchanges with them, that yeah, it's hard, and sometimes it's physically demanding a lot more than anything else you would expect, but this is the one time. This is your year and a half to do it. It's your year and a half to have a hard time and work through it anyways. And so I was always very stuck on the idea. I remember 3 months before I finished, my mission president called me in, and I wasn't doing too well, and he was like, "You can go home if you need to." And that wasn't an option. I know that I wasn't doing okay, but it wasn't an option. And I feel very strongly that, anxiety it's very common. I realize that now. Depression as well. I mean, I can't say I didn't have that as well, obviously. But it was totally a safe place to have that. And I knew that the Lord was aware of it. So I got a lot of blessings, and I had a lot of prayers on my behalf. And I told people, that was my biggest thing, was not keeping it inside. Obviously my companions knew about it, but it got to the point where I just talked about it openly because it helped a lot. And having other people know, ward members knew. And when they knew, they were able to help me a lot more and say encouraging things. And so I think putting yourself out there when you're having those kind of issues helps a lot. And so I remember I was having a particularly hard time in one of my areas. Lots of things going on, at home. And it was just like every week I was getting some more bad news on top of feeling overwhelmed, having anxiety. I remember one day I woke up and I felt like my body can't do this. My spirit can't do this. And so I got on my knees and I prayed. And I got the prompting of counsel me not. And I knew that was a scripture, but I wasn't quite sure where, so I had to look it up, and it's in Jacob 5. And it's when the Lord of the vineyard is talking about pruning his trees, and the servant comes to him, and the Lord of the vineyard has started to prune an area with a bad spot, is what the servant calls it. And he says, "Why are you working so hard in this bad spot?" And the Lord of the vineyard says, "Counsel me not. I knew it was a poor spot of ground." And that took all the weight and expectation of getting everything right just off of me. It took the weight of my anxiety and depression off of me. Didn't mean it didn't exist, but suddenly I knew that the Lord knew that I was a poor spot of ground. And that helped me a lot to admit that I wasn't completely nailing it. I wasn't doing fantastic. I wasn't working 24/7, feeling the Spirit 24/7. I wasn't capable of going hard all the time. And to know that the Lord knew that, and that He was okay with it, not just okay with it, but completely aware of it, and completely aware of what He could do with that poor spot of ground, I think it changed me. I know a lot of people commented after my mission that it was around that time frame that I kind of had changed a lot, and so I took pride out of the equation. It was a lot of humility, and I'm so grateful, so grateful to be knocked down that far, because it was exhausting to pretend like I was okay or to pretend like I was doing well. And so I'm really grateful for that counsel from the Lord. So.